Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
Whether it is crossing physical borders or overcoming political and cultural divides, the journey to getting the education you want can be very challenging. We explore some inspiring examples in 3 very different regions. Violence and crime are common in some parts of Mexico. One project is providing access to a safer learning environment. But how do these students feel about having Mexican passports but US school books?
When the 4 Ara siblings prepare their backpacks for school, there's an unusual and essential item they mustn't forget: their passports.
To lose the passport is like losing something very special to you, because that would mean missing 3 weeks of classes.
The Ara children live in Mexico, but their school is in the US. They benefit from a special agreement between the 2 countries. Every morning they leave home before dawn and walk the dusty streets of Ciudad Juarez to the minibus that will take them and other students to the border checkpoint at El Paso, Texas.
I got goosebumps when I crossed it for the first time. I said to myself, oh, I never thought I might cross it one day. And so it was something big.
Now the walk over this bridge is just routine. It's one of the world's most transited border crossings. More than 4 million pedestrians cross it every year.
10,000 migrants, almost 10,000 migrants that had died since the 90s, looking for a better life. So that is the more dramatic violation of rights. And this is due to a strategy of militarizing the border, an intentional policy that is pushing those migrants into these isolated places where they died in the deserts, in the mountains, and in the rivers. So I think that is a very dramatic human rights crisis.
Those who can cross the border legally discover a different world. For a few hours, hundreds of teenagers escape one of the country's most violent cities to get to the safe and prosperous first world haven of El Paso. Up to 70% of students at the Lydia Patterson Institute in El Paso are from Juarez.
Most of them don't speak English, and they go through the middle school with a special program that will incorporate English as a second language with the core subjects of the 7th and 8th grade. So by the time they get to high school, they're totally bilingual.
The Institute grants scholarships to students from poor backgrounds in Juarez and places them in the US curriculum system. If they pass their exams, they could get a university education in America. While many of their friends in Mexico are already working, these students have the chance to escape the poverty trap.
Transnistria broke away from Moldova 25 years ago, and ever since, Russian influence has characterized the region and its education system. But there are some students who prefer to travel to other side of the border to go to school. Let's find out more.
On first appearance, this seems like a normal school bus, but the teachers and pupils on board are taking a highly unusual trip to school. They're from Grigoriopol in Transnistria, a breakaway region that's not internationally recognized. Since its split from Moldova, the Russian influence in Transnistria has grown considerably. In order to study their mother tongue, Romanian, these students, some 160 of them, have to cross into Moldova every day. This morning the journey unfolds without problems, but the students say this is very rare. They've chosen a school which reflects their national identity.
I think there's an obligation to fight for children's rights, because it's the only way to give them a top education, a special one, and to educate them in the spirit of the truth. That truth doesn't exist in the schools of Transnistria, where they learn a strange history, one of another state. In schools where Cyrillic is used, they learn the geography of another country, while we want to know the history of our country, our roots.
Even though a third of the population is of Romanian origin, authorities banned the language in 1996. Some locals set up a clandestine Romanian language school, but this was closed by officials in 2002. Its director says the only solution was to send children across the border to Moldova.
It's true, some parents of our students prefer to conceal from the authorities the fact that their children come here to study in this school in Moldova because they fear they'd be discriminated against afterwards.
And indeed, it's reported some supporters of Romanian language education were detained. At first it was difficult for the children to understand this conflict and the political issues around it, but despite the challenges, students like Lucia stick to their daily routine.
This school is the only one that gives me the chance to learn the official language, Moldovan, the mother tongue of Moldova, and its history and traditions.
But the school's future is far from certain. The day after this report was filmed, its director was again stopped at the border and detained for several hours, a school trapped in a frozen political conflict.
Despite the peace agreement, religious and political divides still exist in the hearts and minds of many people in Northern Ireland. One project is trying to break down these walls. Let's find out how.
After decades of bloody conflict, Belfast is, for the most part, a peaceful city. But the divisions between Catholics and Protestants are still very evident in the graffiti on the walls, on the flags flying over segregated communities, and even in schools. 17 years after the signing of the peace agreement, Northern Ireland remains a divided society. The borders are psychological as well as physical, as Patricia Merton knows. She's the principal of Hazelwood Primary School. Running through its car park is the so-called Peace Wall.
There's a Catholic estate on this side and a Protestant estate on the other side of our school, and we're right in the centre, which makes integration in this area incredibly important.
Big smile!
The school, located in a flashpoint area, was seen as revolutionary when it was founded back in 1985. Hazelwood is a so-called coexistence school. Traditionally, families prefer to send their children to schools where religions don't mix. Not in Hazelwood, where 40% of children are Protestants, 30% Catholic, and the remaining 30% other religions or none.
It was very difficult. It was a big, big step. And we would have found children who couldn't follow through, whose parents, whose wider family community put too much pressure on them, and the parents would take their children away.
In Northern Ireland there are now 62 integrated schools, primary and secondary, with nearly 22,000 students. That's twice as many as 1998, when the peace agreement was signed. At Malone College in South Belfast, the pupils and teachers are not afraid to discuss the sensitive subjects of this divided society: religion and community relations. All staff are trained to deal with controversial issues. 30 years ago, such dialogue would have been unimaginable, but these kids were born after the peace deal.
I'm very comfortable with all of the religions and the Protestant people in the school, because it's like we're all integrated and we're all in the same classes and there's no segregation here, so no, yeah.
I think because my parents went to obviously an all Protestant school when they were in secondary school, and they obviously wanted me to be different because they knew there was conflict in Northern Ireland, and obviously it was, they would have obviously they would have wanted me to obviously go and experience something different to what they done, and that's why they sent me to Malone.
However, these students at an integrated schools event in Northern Ireland's Parliament are very much in the minority. They represent only 5% of the total school-aged population. Despite progress made over the past 2 decades, there's still a long way to go.
Have you ever crossed borders in the search of a better education? Where did you go? We look forward to hearing from you on our social media pages. Goodbye for now.
Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.